Hey guys, it's Steph. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be
spilling the tea.
I'm going to be getting into a little bit of the story behind how myself and my husband met. He is Irish, born and raised in Ireland, and I was born and raised in the States. I was actually technically born in Arkansas, but I'm basically from Michigan. I really hardly even lived in Arkansas. My dad was in the Air Force at the time, so I literally was only there for a few weeks. If you're new to my channel, welcome, but my channel has basically thus far been about mine and my husband and our two daughters' journey with moving from America to Ireland. As an American, I was able to get my residence permit because I am the spouse of an Irish citizen, and that's how I'm able to live in Ireland as an American. I do share on my channel little bits and pieces, and I have shared our background, but yeah, I'll just share a little bit more how we officially met.
How did I, a little 21-year-old Steffi,
meet some man that was born and raised in Ireland and end up with 2 kids and getting married and now living in Ireland. I was coming out of a little phase of my life where I just needed to kind of get myself together a little bit and start acting a little more responsibly. And with that, I needed to get a new job. So I applied to a couple of restaurants in the area, and I ended up getting hired at an Irish restaurant/bar, and I was working as a host there. After a couple months of working there was this evening, I think it was like a slow Sunday evening, and I was bored sitting at the host stand waiting to be cut, and in came this handsome young Irish boy. In came Gary, and he was just asking to speak with another manager. At the time, off of first impression, I heard his Irish accent, and I kind of figured that he was someone in upper management of the company because I had met other people before that would come in once in a while, like an area director, somebody who's not in our specific location all the time. But the people that were like in upper management that I had met before did happen to be Irish and have like an Irish accent. It turns out he was a new manager at the location that we were working at. Yeah, so there was times that I would get off of work and I liked to have a drink or two. Sometimes I would actually stay at the restaurant and sit at the bar and have a drink or two. And then there was times where like a few people from work would be hanging out at another bar nearby. And so that's how Gary and I got to know each other and chat and kind of started hanging out after work. So that wasn't necessarily frequent, but then it did kind of develop into him and I hanging out just one-on-one. We went out to the movies, we went out to eat a couple times. It was mostly pretty casual, but I did start to develop feelings. I was always much too shy to ever voice how I was feeling, so it kind of just stayed at a friendship level between him and I. But I definitely started to like him, and I did think,
like, does he like me back?
you know, but I was nervous to say anything. And obviously when you work together, or especially somebody being your manager, it's typically either not allowed or very frowned upon to develop any sort of romantic relationship as coworkers. So anyways, time went by and I basically always held in how I was feeling about him. He had started working at our location probably around February, and actually by the time that it got to November or the end of November, he was being transferred to another location that was actually in Columbus, Ohio. I remember we hung out on like probably one of the last nights that he was around in Michigan before leaving. And then shortly after he went to Columbus, probably within a week or so, he came back to Michigan for a quick visit, and he was at the restaurant, hanging out with some people, having a few drinks. I ended up coming up and was hanging out there for a little bit. And actually just before he left, I actually did build up the nerve to tell him how I was feeling, because I said something like I was thinking about quitting the restaurant that we were working at because I was starting to really like him, and I kind of felt frustrated. I don't know, working in his presence, knowing that I liked him, not knowing like where things were going. And I can't fully remember how he responded, but he definitely didn't like reciprocate that he was feeling the same. I think he said something like, "Oh no, don't leave, don't quit. This is a good job for you." But I was a little bummed because I didn't get like the response that, you know, I was ultimately hoping for. So then we're in December, you know, he's been gone for, I don't know, barely a couple of weeks. And he texts me and says, "Do you want to come down and stay the weekend in Ohio with me? There's a band called Flogging Molly." It was like an Irish band or something, or an Irish cover band. I'm not sure, but they were playing a show on this particular weekend. So I was so excited that he asked me to go down. And of course I said yes. Yeah, it It was probably mid-December. I drove down. We went out both of the nights, Friday and Saturday night. We had a lot of fun. We had a really good time. I drove back to Michigan, kind of feeling good about things. So then fast forward a couple of weeks and it's Christmas time, and he's actually coming up to Michigan to stay with a friend or two that we had worked with because, he had no friends or family basically, other than the friends like he had met through work. But yeah, he had no family in the States to spend the time with around the holidays. He was only gonna be in Michigan for like 2 or 3 nights, but of course I was hoping to be able to see him for a little bit. But as the time got closer, and then as he was in Michigan, it basically just wasn't aligning that we were going to be able to get together. I was a little hurt. I remember thinking like, oh, I wish he had prioritized seeing me a little bit more. Well, anyways, the last night that he was in town, I was working during the day. I got off early-ish in the evening. I had one drink after work at the bar, and then a couple other friends that I work with were getting off work too. So we ended up going back to one of their houses. We were having a drink or two there, and I ended up sharing with them that I was late for my time of the month by about a week. And in hindsight, I should have probably felt more worried than I was at the time, just because I'm a pretty regular person. Suppose I just thought,
Oh no, it couldn't be that.
anyways, the friend's house that I was at happened to have pregnancy tests. And she was like, you gotta take one. So I did. And there was, one line and then the faintest ever second line. And obviously I was not expecting that. And I didn't quite know what to think because I had never even had a scare or been in a situation really where I had even Googled like what happens if there's like an incredibly faint line. Started to process things, but then I went and met up with my best friend. I bought a couple of pregnancy tests. I ended up taking another one the next morning. I spent the night at my best friend's house, and that test the next morning was pretty clear. But I had been texting Gary and since the initial test that I took, and I was like, I know we didn't end up getting to see each other tonight or over the past couple of nights, but I'm going to need to meet up with you tomorrow morning before you leave for your drive to head back to Columbus. And I let on that it was important and urgent and that we had to. I think he did probably start to maybe get some idea. So anyways, yeah, I remember it was in the morning. We went and met up actually just in the parking lot of a restaurant nearby the restaurant where we used to work together at, and I went over and sat in his car and I told him. And for two people that weren't in an official relationship and for something that was such a surprise, I feel like actually basically long story short, like we took it pretty well. Like we didn't freak out. I suppose it was partially like, obviously in the beginning it's kind of a shock and it doesn't even feel real for a little while. Over the next month, he's obviously in Columbus and I'm in Michigan, and we're talking every day, whether it's texting or calling, and he's being great and supportive. And I end up planning and moving down to Columbus with him. It was about a 3.5-hour drive. I always remember it was February 5th that I packed up my little blue Chevy Spark and drove down there, and kind of basically the rest is history. Yeah, things only moved forward from there. I wanted to get back to Michigan, so we did end up moving from Ohio to Michigan. And then I couldn't get a job in Michigan because of his visa and work sponsorship situation. So long story short, we moved around a little bit, and I think he knew like an Irish job recruiter that was in the Washington, D.C. area. So we ended up living in the Washington, D.C. area for about a year. We actually lived in Maryland and Virginia. Then we got back to Michigan, and we were in Michigan for about 5 or 6 years before we decided to move to Ireland, and that's where we're at now. There was a lot of things to consider. It wasn't an easy and straightforward decision, but to put it simply, ultimately, we ended up deciding to move here because of our kids, in hopes of them having a safer, better upbringing and well-being, and just feeling like it was a beautiful opportunity to be able to take advantage of to raise our kids somewhere where ultimately we just felt safer. So yeah, that's about it. that's our little story. We certainly did a lot of moving around as a couple. I love our story. I love our journey together. Of course, it's not always rainbows and butterflies, but I'm really grateful. And I know it sounds cheesy, but sometimes it felt like we were kind of meant to find each other. And I know we were certainly meant to create our two little beautiful girls. Okay guys, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel if you are not subscribed. And hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye.